So mountain biking, in fact cycling, has always waged a war with this particular problem. At the end of the day, punctures will ruin a ride with ease. Multiple punctures can ruin your enthusiasm for the sport itself. Thankfully, there are things you can do with whatever setup you have to avoid punctures and limit the chances of it happening when you're out riding. So let's dive in and explore all the ways you can make punctures mostly a thing of the past. To start, tubeless. Yep, this war on punctures was very nearly won with the invention of the tubeless tyre. This technology is very resistant to punctures, way more so than normal tube tyres. So just in case you aren't familiar with what a tubeless tyre is, let me just explain. Normally on a tubed rim, the inner tube is inflated and that expands to push the tyre up onto the edge of the rim, seating the bead of the tyre in the correct spot. A tubeless tyre, as the name suggests, has no inner tube. The tyre is seated on the rim with high air pressure via a specific pump or an air line. The tubeless tyre also contains a small amount of fluid, a sealant. This amazing stuff, this sealant also plugs any punctures whilst you ride too, on the fly. Tubeless are hands down great, but they do have a couple of negatives. Replacing a tubeless tyre isn't as easy as it would be to do on a normal tube tyre, but with the right tools it isn't too bad. A tubeless tyre can also lose air pressure in another way to get in a puncture. Now, bear with me, they can burp on a corner. Yep, if you rail a turn too hard, then it is possible to fold the tyre over so much that it actually leaks some air for a split moment. That's not an everyday experience, but it can happen. All that said, with the tubeless tyre, we went a long way to eradicating the puncture as we know it, but not completely. So what else can we do? Tyre inserts. Foam inserts are an amazing way to make the tubeless tyre even more resistant to punctures. This tech is basically a super lightweight foam, a solid inner tube shaped sponge. The insert can fill the space within a tubeless tyre, still allowing for the tubeless fluid to move around and do its really incredible job. It adds some weight and also some difficulty in fitting the insert, which is a slightly more complicated process than just doing a tubeless tyre. Some downsides, but the upside is that your tubeless tyre is now even more resistant to punctures, and incredibly, even if the worst happens and you lose air, the tyre is still rideable to a certain degree because of the insert. That can be amazing for an elite rider on EWS Enduro stage, or making it just back to the cafe with your mates at the bike park. Plug that tubeless tyre. The tubeless tyre is not completely bomb-proof. However, even a serious hole in these tyres can still be mended on the trail using tyre plugs. These can be rammed into the tyre whilst you're out on the trail. The plug works with the sealant in the sense that the plug fills the larger hole and the sealant can still do its magic. These plugs can be incorporated into the tools you can carry whilst you're out on the ride, and suddenly you're even more resistant to that puncture. Sounding good, isn't it? Okay, what about some basics? What about a spare tube? What about all those riders who are still running tubes? What can you do to fight the war against the puncture? One simple way to do it is carry a spare tube and a pump. Sounds cumbersome, but really it isn't. These days there are super lightweight inner tubes and tiny pumps. Even the smallest of bags could fit these items in, and you have the ultimate solution to a flat, a brand new replacement tube. Couldn't be simpler. What about this? Our partner Muck-Off has brought out this sealant for your tubes. I love this. It means the massive advantage of a tubeless tyre, the fact that it fixes itself on the fly, is now an update to any tube tyre. Obviously, the tube tyre is still heavier than a tubeless, but this is one solution that I think really levels the playing field between the choice of tubed or tubeless. Now, there's plenty of technological development that can help for punctures, but there is something you can do to adapt your riding style to avoid punctures too. This can be as simple as adjusting your line choices, avoiding the faster rock drop or the gnarly route course for the lower speed but smoother line choice maybe. You can take it a step further though and develop a smoother riding style. Now, I'm not pretending that this is an easy thing to do, but it can be done. There are riders out there who just don't get the quantity of punctures that everyone else does. And it usually comes down to a glassy, smooth riding style. In all honesty, you don't get that style by thinking about avoiding punctures, but perfecting that smooth style would have that result. What about trading some grip for a bit more puncture resistance? On the right day, it could be a choice you can make. Say for instance, you have great weather, a dry trail that a harder tyre could still work on. If you have puncture concerns, then loading the tyre with a bit more pressure could bring a significant amount of puncture protection. Not as easy to benefit on a weather day from this sort of thing. The mud could make it a bit difficult to run a softer tyre. And when grip is key, handling on the trail is the most important thing. So harder tyres are an option on an easy dry weather trail. There you go, I really hope you never get another puncture in your riding endeavours, I really do. But to make sure you don't, then have a think what you can do to either avoid punctures altogether or fix them when they happen. My advice is have a solution planned, not a problem waiting to happen. Take care on your bike and have a blast out there. I will see you next time on GMBN. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe to GMBN. Laters.